Hello, students, friends, and random people on the internet. I have a few students who are planning to do log cabin, and I thought I would just show some tips for doing this on the rigid heddle. You can, of course, use single threads in your warp by warping alternate colors in just the slots and then moving the colors when you're doing your second pull through of the holes and having all of one color on the top and the other color on the bottom, and then switching when you're ready, which of course you have to have also done 2 slots in a row of that color, but it's much easier to double it. So that's what I'm going to do. I have some cotton that's left over from some other projects, and the first thing I had to do, of course, was decide on my set. I decided on the set based on that normally if I was doubling 2/8 for something like a table runner, I would use a 12 or 12.5 dent reed, depending on which brand. But I wanted something a bit drapier, so I'm going with a 10 dent reed, which is equivalent with a single 2/8 to 20 EPI. You'll notice that I have taped a piece of cardboard along the bottom of my reed. The reason for this is I've noticed when I'm doubling my warp threads, often, especially in a longer warp, I find that the tension becomes a real problem with the bottom shed, so which with the things that are in the slots. And I think it's just because of the difference in length you're going to get by bringing some of them through here, and some of them might come through even as low as that. So I'm trying to even out where the slots and holes thread by having that piece of cardboard across there. For my larger Ashford, I've picked up a piece of aluminum somebody was getting rid of, and I'll use that, maybe even screw it and unscrew it onto that. But for now I'm just using cardboard because I wanted to make two scarves. I decided to use my really wacky DIY warping board that somebody was throwing away with no dowels in it. It's kind of funny, and you can't get a hugely long warp onto it, but I did manage to get a 14-foot warp, so I'll have a bit over 6 feet for each of the scarves, and they'll shrink a bit. I'll measure the first one at probably 6.5 feet, and then the next one will just be as long as I can go with it. I've started here by warping through a hole. So this decision about what you're going to do with your edges, I tend to try to remember always to start and end my warp in the same thing. So start it with a hole, end it with a hole. And that of course means that your last thread, it's easy for this, you just pull the last one through a hole. The reason for that is when you're changing shuttles every row, you can kind of skip a warp thread and have jaggedy edges in your selvages, which you don't really want. So if you do this, it becomes very easy to always put one shuttle over or under the other shuttle, whichever works, depending on how you've set it up, before you send it through your shed, and that way it kind of catches and you don't end up with those zigzags. You could, of course, also start and end with a slot instead of a hole and just use it as a float as you would with a floor loom or a table loom, where you're going, say, under the first one and then over your last thread all the time, which also gives you nice edges. Hi, so I just paused to see if I could give you guys a look at me warping. I'm not sure that's worthwhile, but there are a few more things I wanted to say while I'm doing that. One thing is the beauty of the rigid heddle is that, so I'm doing all the holes are red and all the slots are white at this point. The great thing about the rigid heddle when you're warping is not just that it's so fast, which it is, and that's wonderful, but also you don't have to be counting your warp threads while you're doing it, unlike when you're just working onto a warping board. There's always that chance for a miscount, and if you're combining colors in a more complicated way, you can end up spending a lot of time counting and recounting, especially with these finer threads. Another thing I just was going to mention is you might have noticed that I had 3 colors on my Lazy Kate there, kind of the taupe and this burgundy and the white. And I picked out the 3 of them. The 2 lighter colors do contrast pretty well with the red, but of course the white contrasts better. But they're all leftover cones, and I'm not exactly sure if I'm going to have enough for 2 scarves just in 2 of the colors. I'm pretty sure I've got enough of the red, but the white might be a bit lacking. And I thought it would be interesting to do a stripe down the middle of a different color. So that's the other reason why I did the 9-inch. I wanted this to be symmetrical. Don't ask me why, I often don't care. But I decided it would be, so I'm going to have 2-inch stripes that will alternate, dark light and light dark. And on either side, and then in the middle there's going to be 1 inch where I'll use the taupe instead of the white going down the middle, and then I'll play around. What am I doing here? I'll play around with that in the warp. In the web with the web. So I'll use both the lighter white and the somewhat darker valued taupe, and just see, what kind of things I get. I can also, separate with log cabin. It doesn't always have to be log cabinish, so you can in fact take a little bit of a break from that and just do one color or the other. So if I think I'm running low on the red, I could do some stripes of just the taupe and the white to separate out the log cabinish bits. So I hope you can see a little bit of what I'm doing here. I guess if not, I won't use it. I'll have to watch it before I post it, something I do not always do. I can add in a comment at some point when I finish weaving this, which should be soon, as to whether or not the piece of cardboard. Thanks for watching. I hope it's helpful. I just thought I would show you a picture of how gorgeous I think this looks on there. If you're looking for more information about how to warp a rigid heddle using a warping board or many other things, you should check out Rigid Heddle in Brisbane on YouTube. Her stuff is much more professional than mine, and she has great advice about many